and gentlemen. Wow, what a good turnout. If you could make sure that everyone who wants to get anything in, that would be great. Please around. Without further ado, here's Ken.
Thanks for asking me to do a test on the trade variety bill. I think it's a brilliant event, and congratulations to everyone who's organised it, and to Mike. It's really heartening to see a small room, but at least it's packed. So welcome everyone for coming and feeling the need to make some gesture of resistance to what's going on, because we do live in extraordinarily contradictory times. On the one hand, there's this great austerity program, which is austerity if you're in the middle or if you're weak. There's not very much austerity if you're in the top 3% with their tax breaks and tax evasion and tax cuts. Not much austerity there. And we have mass unemployment, and we have the destruction of the environment. And what is extraordinary, the contradiction, is that it's a very quiet period in terms of struggle. You wonder, where are the trade unions, where are the mass demonstrations, where is the opposition? And I think we should come back to that. But I think it's very reminiscent of the 1930s, when faced with similar privations, there was a similar lack of fight back. And that's why, talking to Mike, we thought it might be useful just to show a glimpse of what the political programme was at that time, and for that time, what the vision was, the changes that people felt they could bring about. Just have a glimpse of that, which is the Labour Party manifesto of 1945, and then maybe talk something about it afterwards. So we did this little film about it, and so this is a few minutes of that, and as I say, it's people's memories interspersed with some of the analysis and some of the principal items from the manifesto. We showed this to some younger folks when we were making this film, and they said, "Wow, that's what we need now. If somebody offers that, then they win a big majority." So with that in mind, let's have a quick look at it, and then not go on too long, and then say something about it.
Having come through the actions where there was mass unemployment, coming through the war years where there was rationing and lack of food, and where there was the housing standard was very poor right across the country, people who fought in the war, people who supported the economy and the war effort, they were looking for some sort of, if you like, it was like a war or peace dividend, and those were the key things that they were looking for, and that's what the Labour Party manifesto really addresses.
Hard-faced men and their political friends can control the government. They control the banks, the mines, the big industries, largely the press and the cinema. They controlled the means by which people got their living. They controlled the ways by which people learn about the world outside.
When people look back at the years of the 1930s and 1920s, saw the mass unemployment, the wars, the revolutions, the fears of the dictators, the misery that was caused, and said, there's something about the systems that worked then which was almost inescapable. We've got to change it.
The great interwar slums were not acts of God or blind forces. They were the sure and certain result of the concentration of too much economic power in the hands of too few men.
We stand for order, for positive, constructive progress as against the chaos of economic do-as-they-please anarchy.
The price of so-called economic freedom for the few was too high. It has brought to the cost of idleness and misery for millions.
My father was not an active
active trade unionist or anything. He got a map of the world and he put it on the table, and he said, look, he said, they grow wheat here, you get rubber from here, you get oil from here, and you get fruit from here. This is what we're looking for, is an integrated world system where everybody has what they need and everything is developed for everybody. And I thought that was absolutely amazing. He said to me, it's called socialism. And, you know, as a kid of 10, I thought it was absolutely amazing, and I still do.
The Labour Party is a socialist party and proud of it. Its ultimate purpose at home is the establishment of the Socialist Commonwealth of Great Britain. Free, democratic, efficient, progressive, public spirited. Its material resources organised in the service of the British people.
All for one for all. Not greed, no greed and selfishness.
There are basic industries ripe and overripe for public ownership and management in the direct service of the nation.
There must be priorities in the use of raw materials. Food prices must be held. Homes for the people for all before luxuries for the few. We do not want a short boom followed by collapse as after the last war.
Labour puts first things first. Security from the war. Food, houses, clothing, employment, leisure and social security for all must come before the claims of a few, the more rent, interest and profit. We have shown that we can organise the resources of the country to win the war. We can do the same in peace.
Churchill and the Tories went so far as to print tens of thousands of copies of Friedrich von Hayek's The Road to Serfdom, which is a book that basically says if you start off interfering with the economy just a little bit, just a little bit, you set off down the road towards totalitarianism. You end up with Nazi Germany or Stalinist Russia, just by having, introducing a little bit of welfare spending, say, maybe nationalising the oil industry. The Tories printed this.
What a shame it would be, and what a folly, to add to our load the bitter quarrel with which the extreme socialists are eager to convulse and exploit these critical years. For the sake of the country and of your own happiness, I call upon them to march with me under the banner of freedom towards the beacon lights of national prosperity and honour, which must ever be our guide.
The election was fantastic. During the war, we always sat and listened to Winston Churchill on the radio. Everybody did. Everybody sat around the radio and listened to Winston Churchill. And as a kid, I mean, that was it to me. He was the leader, and this was incredible.
There is no time to convince about the legislators and fool around with weak stuff. That's what I say. If you do not give strong vote to the national and conservative government,
and then suddenly, my family started talking about something quite different. We sat round, and my father said they were going to vote Labour, and I asked, well, what did that mean? And he explained, and I said, well, why aren't you voting for Winston Churchill? And he said, he got the guns out to the Tony Pandy miners.
The campaign number 10 Downing Street. So we went there, and the whole domestic staff were turned out, like upstairs, downstairs. And the butler said, we're all conservative in this house, and they made at the back, the little boy said, and we'd lose our jobs if we weren't.
Labour will proceed with a housing programme with the maximum practical speed until every family has a good standard of accommodation.
Housing ought to be dealt with in relation to good town planning. pleasant surroundings, attractive layout, efficient utility services, including the necessary transport facilities.
The best health services should be available free for all. Money must no longer be the passport to the best treatment.
The great purpose of education is to give us individual citizens capable of thinking for themselves.
By the provision of concert halls, modern libraries, theatres and suitable civic centres, we desire to assure to our people full access to the great heritage of culture in this nation.
Labour will now have a majority.
Okay, so that was the vision then, and think where we are now, and think where we are with the Labour Party now, and think where the mealy-mouthed utterings of the Miliband brothers, and see how far we've fallen. And I think it's time we pulled our socks up and said no more. I mean, I know there'll be a talk about from Vote Against the Cuts, where they'll talk about some of the things that are happening. But I think it's just worth just one or two marks of the austerity programme. I just made a list of one or two. The poorest 10% of the people in the country, it's been estimated, will lose 30% of their income through a mixture of benefit cuts, of the social wage that's being attacked, and the provisions that they get. 30% of the income of the poorest 10%. Homelessness, the housing benefit cuts, the bedroom tax. Everyone agrees this is going to see a massive rise in homelessness. And one figure that I read was that 660,000 tenants with a spare room can't become smaller accommodations. So they either have to pay up, or they go into debt, get evicted, and they're on the streets. Where is the sense in that? The gross inequality, ever widening gap between the rich and the poor. You hear a lot about the benefit scroungers. You don't hear very much about the tax evasion. You don't hear very much about the billions that are lost to the public purse. And it's interesting, of course, thinking of those people, that another of the Johnson brothers is now number 10. Another one of the bullies from the Bullingdon Club. So the old ruling class is back in power. Let's make no mistake. The old ruling class are there, and we look for a response. Legal aid is being removed, so that all the issues that will arise from homelessness, from injustice at work, no legal aid for that. So if you're down at the bottom and you suffer an injustice, you get no support. So we don't really have we don't have fair justice in this country if that's the case. If justice only belongs to those who can afford hard there is no justice. And at another level, we heard there about culture and the importance that Labour movement put on culture, and we're now closing libraries as fast as the government can, because they're cutting the money to local authorities, and local authorities say, well, what can we do? So the libraries get shut. The NHS, of course, a huge issue with the National Health Service. Privatises every aspect, and there will be people here who know more about this than I do, but I met somebody a few days ago who said that all the child care services in Devon, apart from where it's a question of child abuse, but all child care services are now run by Virgin. So Richard Branson is now built into the NHS. and this is what we've allowed to happen. We've allowed it to happen. It's down to us in the end, because we know who the enemy is, but where's our side? Where's our side's point of view? And then not to mention foreign policy. Just to think where we are. With illegal wars, complicit in torture, and now the news this morning or last night is that we're now a base for drones. We're a base for drones to go over extrajudicial killings, they call it. It's actually slaughter. How many kids is the US and now Britain complicit in killing in Afghanistan and Pakistan through drones? And there's of course a huge outpouring of grief for the killings in Boston. Appalling. that nobody would justify that or apologise for it or condemn it in any way. But think how many kids the equivalent got killed through drones. Never mind the rest of the illegal wars. How many 100,000 we killed in Iraq? So the hypocrisy is shocking. And again, we hear nothing. We hear nothing from the people who are supposed to speak for us. So I wanted to make a couple of points rising after that. One is that this so-called austerity program, the aggressive foreign policy, doesn't come out of nothing. It's a consequence of an economic system. It's a consequence of the power of the multinationals driving the political agenda, undercutting wages, creating mass unemployment, demanding an aggressive foreign policy that will give them a share of the market, will give them access to cheap raw materials. That's the driver for this program that we're now in the middle of. That's the driver for this aggressive foreign policy. And I would suggest to everyone gathered here, and all the schools, all of them are doing a fantastic job, and brilliant to see everyone here. But there is a common denominator to this struggle. We're not individual campaign groups walled off from each other. There's a common denominator, and that's actually what we need to recognise. That's what brings us together. We might come together because we like each other, because we want to support each other's causes. Great. But there's a unifying factor that needs to bring us together, and that is the economic system that applies, that creates the mass unemployment, that creates the casual labour, that creates agency work, that creates the 0 hours contract. I don't know if anyone here is on a 0 hours contract, but I mean, where are the trade unions? We now have a 0 hours contract for people. I mean, I met a girl in Wales doing this, and she was looking after old people. She was subcontracted to a private company. They were employing her. I said, oh, how many days do you work? She said, I don't know. I said, what's your contract? She said, 0 hours. 0 hours. And yet she's not on the unemployment register. So how many more hundreds of thousands of people do we have to add to that 2.5 million to get the true picture? I mean, this is how far we've fallen. So we need one voice, and we look for our representatives. And where are the trade unions? Where are the trade unions? Last year, they managed a day of action. It took them a year to organise it. You could have got pregnant and had a baby in the time. You organised a day of action. And it was a Saturday. You didn't have to take any time off work. So nobody suffered. There was a walk to the park, a year to organise it. What have we had this year? Nothing. I mean, they're trapped by their politics. They're trapped as social democrats, wanting to prop up the system that doesn't work, trying to scramble for the crumbs off the table when in fact they need to kick the table over. And the Labour Party, well, we needn't talk about the Labour Party neatly when you see and that was a flawed project. I mean, the 45 had many flaws. There was no industrial democracy, and we could talk a lot about that. But the vision that is built in the decade before the 45 election that led to that programme was something that we've allowed ourselves to lose, and that's part of our chance. But I think we desperately need a new movement of the left. We need a movement that brings us together, that recognises our common cause, that will give us a political voice, the same as over 100 years ago the Labour Party was formed to give a voice to Labour. We don't have a voice for Labour now. We have a voice for capital that's one is vicious and one slightly less vicious. But we don't have a voice for Labour and for the working class people, whether in work or not, because the unemployed are simply workers without work. We don't have a voice for what they used to call the common people, for the ordinary people, for the working class people. We don't have a political expression. And that's absolutely what we need. Now there is a People's Assembly in London. I think, is it June? Or is it later? June. There's a People's Assembly now, where assemblies like this are sending people and en masse, I hope. And I think that's a good thing to support. I think I have a worry about it, because if it's a people's assembly, it should be able to take people's decisions. And my fear is because it's sponsored by one or two leading trade unions, it will be a recruiting sergeant for Labour. And if that's the case, it's not much of a people's assembly in my eyes, because I think we've got to start again. However, it's a rallying, it's a focus, it's a rallying point. So I would urge you to suggest that, to support that. And also, some people have set up a website called Left Unity. I think that has possibilities. You may want to look that up, support it. From my point of view, and I think from the point of view of many of us, it needs to bring not only individuals together, it needs to bring all these campaigns together, like all the ones I've schools upstairs and many others, the Save the NHS, the homeless campaigns and so on. We actually need together, because just imagine if all those campaigns linked up and everyone who has this sense of outrage about what's going on, if everyone joined together, we would be unstoppable. And the reason we don't do it is we are disorganized by people who are supposed to lead us. People fall for the propaganda from the right-wing press. And it's really hard for us to communicate to each other and get a sense of our own strength. But if we had decent trade unions, if we had a left in the unions, if we had a political movement that people could identify with, we would be unstoppable. And it's down to us to make it happen. So thank you.